Good morning, everyone. Dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, I extend very warm wishes and welcome all the participants on this training program on disaster risk reduction measures for urban resilience organized by Department of Geography, Kirori College, University of Delhi in collaboration with National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. This training program will run for 5 days and will comprehensively cover all the aspects of various natural hazards and about disaster mitigation and management. I, being earthquake engineer and working after every earthquake towards repair, rehabilitation, prevention, and preparedness since 1991, Uttarkashi earthquake would restrict myself to earthquake engineering problems in India and would like to give you insights about it. The same is applicable to any hazard, whether it is geological or geophysical hazard like earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis, hydrological hazards like floods, meteorological hazards like cyclones, storm surges, and climatological hazards like thunderstorm. At the outset, I feel honored and privileged to be invited to be chief guest for the today's program, thanks to NIDM and Kirori College. Let me first tell you that after every damaging earthquake or even slight tremor like the one we had recently in Delhi, a lot of coverage is given in newspapers, on TV, on social media, WhatsApp to the issues of earthquake safety. Different agencies announce plan towards this. Many experts are interviewed on TV channels to share their wisdom on ways to mitigate such disasters. Brainstorming sessions, conferences are held all over the country, and the poor public feels reassured that problem of earthquake safety will now be taken care of until the next such earthquake, when we realize that not really much got done since the last event. My submission today, in the backdrop of recurrent earthquakes in our country, especially Kashmir earthquake, is my sober introspection of earthquake problem in India. Let me give you the example of 1931 earthquake in Mark, Balochistan, which is now in Pakistan. That earthquake led to construction of several earthquake-resistant railway bungalows in Quetta, which is also in Pakistan now. These constructions in Quetta survived 1935 earthquake, which came just after 4 years, killing approximately 25,000 persons. With the experience of earthquake-resistant bungalows, the Quetta bond, now known as lintel band, was introduced. The horizontal seismic force for design, 10% of weight, was also recommended for design. Subsequently, seismic codes were developed and adopted for reconstruction in Quetta by the army, the railway, and the civil authorities. Clearly, that indicated that it is possible to construct houses that will not kill people in an earthquake way back in 1935. Now, from 1935, let's come to the current scenario. After 2001 Bhuja earthquake, the Indian middle class saw for the first time that multi-storied buildings fell like pack of cards and realized that these housing types are similar to the ones in which they are living or having plans to retire into. The central and state governments announced numerous plans, activities, and it was hoped that India will now have an effective program for earthquake safety, that most, if not all, new construction would comply with seismic codes. The question is, have such hopes been realized? Discussion on various forums, interaction with professional colleagues around the countries, and looking at various construction activities going on in the country. To my understanding, uh, a huge number of unsafe buildings continue to be built every day in different cities and towns. After the 2001 Bhuj earthquake, many municipal authorities have started asking structural engineers and others, such as architects and builders, to certify that the buildings comply with seismic codes. Unfortunately, such certificates are easy to procure and need not have any correlation with how a building is built. Until the municipal authorities start enforcing measures to ensure that buildings indeed complies with code, all certificates will continue to be issued for a variety of regions. Dear friends, the country is going through a major development phase wherein buildings and infrastructure are being added at an unprecedented pace so as to take our country to 5 trillion, 10 trillion, and $30 trillion by the time we celebrate 100 years of our independence. It is a great opportunity to ensure that all new construction comply with seismic requirements. Unfortunately, this is not happening. Let me give you two instances from my personal experience. About 6,000 school buildings were constructed across the state of Gujarat during April 1999 to December 2000 by precast construction technologies that were deficient in seismic aspects. About 75% of these schools either collapsed or severely damaged during 2001 Bhuj earthquake. Another example, the Aston Creek Bridge connecting the North Andaman with Middle Andaman was inaugurated in 2002 and did not have any seismic features. Even though Andaman falls in a high seismic zone, that is zone 5, the deficiencies were pointed out, and yet no corrective measures could be undertaken, and the bridge went out of function after the famous 2001 Sumatra earthquake leading to Great Tsunami. With this current scenario, let me just make the problem statement. Why do we see above state affairs in our country, which is striving to stand in a row of developed countries? In engineering parlance, often it is more important and sometimes even more challenging to define the problem than the solution itself. Quite often, our national and professional pride comes in a way of stating the problem as they are leading to loss of opportunity for finding a solution. Every stakeholders tend to think that his role is most crucial in addressing the earthquake problem or in addressing the issue. Hence, difference of opinion are expected between scientists, engineers, administrators, social scientists, and NGOs on how to solve the earthquake problem. Someone will say that mass awareness campaigns are needed to create a demand for safety construction. Another would say that seismic instruments are critical. Many recommend seismic microzonation before any progress can be made. However, no one will disagree with me that the problem will simply go away if somehow all the buildings can withstand the future shocks. Clearly, unsafe building stock is the problem, and the solution is very simple to ensure that all new constructions are earthquake resistant. Secondly, all existing structures are made earthquake resistant over a period of time through sensible retrofitting or uh, strengthening. Let's assume that average life of building is 50 years and the building stock is growing at a rate of 2% per annum. So if no new unsafe buildings are built in future, in about 20 years, 60% of buildings will be earthquake resistant even without any retrofitting. It is therefore obvious that our priority should be to develop a robust system for ensuring safe construction of new buildings. Simultaneously, we need to develop systems, policies, and methodologies for seismic retrofitting of existing structures to prepare for sensible retrofitting program. Now, let me discuss quickly these two problems which I stated. First is ensuring safety in new construction. How can one ensure that all the new buildings are safe? In one of the scientific conferences abroad, one very prominent structural engineer from Europe mentioned that problems of unsafe construction remain, and that, in his opinion, the cities should hire engineers true to their profession and pay them well so that they do not indulge in unfair practices and new buildings are built to be safe. This is just to illustrate that the sophistication in building industry is often overlooked by public administration, uh, politicians, and sometimes even by civil engineers and architects. Human greed and lack of knowledge are universal all over the globe, but despite these, it is possible to develop adequate checks and balances so as to have safe new construction. There are few important components for ensuring safe construction. One is public awareness. It is easy to implement safety programs if the public is well aware of the seismic risk. After 2001 Bhuj and 2005 Kashmir earthquake, there have been tremendous awareness. What remains to be done is to give public a perspective on the need of changes in our construction environment. Second is legal framework. After 2001 earthquake, many state governments and municipal authorities have made the code compliance mandatory. There is now a need to develop clear understanding on accountability of architects, structural engineers, contractors, construction engineers, developers, and municipal authorities towards safety. Third is technical competence. In the last decades, numerous capacity building activities have helped improve the knowledge levels of structural engineers about seismic codes. The National Program on Earthquake Engineering Education, NPEEE, trained numerous faculty members of engineering and architectural colleges, and many such colleges now have included the subject in their curricula. However, a lot more remains to be done on this aspect. Uh, Another aspect is professional ambience. The profession of architecture, medicine, accountancy, law are regulated in our country. The respective councils of these professions ensure the competence of those licensed to practice and ethical practices by their members. A system for regulating engineering profession is long overdue in our country. There has been considerable decay in capabilities of artisans and technicians associated with building industry in India. A mason today has far lower competence than 1 or 2 decades ago. Hence, a certificate system is also needed for artisans and masons. The state of Gujarat and few more states have moved ahead in this direction. Uh, Another thing is enforcement. Uh, Friends, it does not cost anything to wear a seatbelt when we move in a car, and yet the police must enforce it before the public learns to comply. Should we then expect every property developer to voluntarily incur extra expenditure for code compliance, particularly when he himself will not stay in that building? Therefore, municipal authorities must not only collect certificates of compliance of seismic codes, but also verify such certificates independently by a cursory review of structural drawings. Since 2001 Bhuj earthquake, it has been discussed with various concerned officials on this, and it is time that municipal authorities undertake the task of effective enforcement. It is also ironic that we require a license to drive a car and we penalize a licensed driver for unsafe driving, but we refuse to regulate unsafe construction. However, I saw that after Bhuj earthquake, a relatively junior administrator in the town of Bhuj, Anjar, Gandhidham, and Bachau district implemented a semi-informal system of previous structural drawings before issuing building permission in and around Kutch district. Research and development is also very important if we need to ensure new construction to be safe. Uh, 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 our construction practices differ from those in the developed countries, and several technical problems require indigenous research and development. There is a clear need to focus research on engineering of earthquake as against focus on science of earthquakes that the country has been doing. A national initiative in research and outreach in engineering of earthquakes on the lines of NPEEE is the call of the day. While we have made some progress in terms of public awareness, legal framework, and capacity building of engineers, we have done pathetically little towards improving professional ambience in building industry and towards its enforcement. This was all about urban. Let me also talk a bit about rural and informal construction that are not regulated by municipal authorities. Several approaches are needed in this regard. We need technological solution wherein common man can construct an ordinary earthquake resistant house with locally available resources. Examples of traditional constructions having excellent earthquake resistance include Assam type housing in the northeastern, region of the country, Thaji Diwali construction in Kashmir. Now, research is needed to develop contemporary versions of these types of constructions. We must also discourage construction of reinforced concrete frame building, which are supposed to be the safe during earthquake without competent engineering supervision. Instead, buildings with confined masonry and those with reinforced concrete shear walls are more appropriate when engineering inputs are not available. As practices in urban areas will improve, so will the same in the rural sector, as informal sector always imitates the formal sector. Now, let me also come to the next problem statement, that is seismic retrofitting of existing constructions. Unfortunately, the sophistication required for undertaking retrofitting has not been adequately articulated in our country. Either there is a casual attitude towards it or too much aura associated with the retrofitting. After 2001 earthquake, several government departments in Gujarat assigned the design of seismic retrofitting for a large number of public buildings to some structural engineering firms. Unfortunately, no efforts were made to ensure that the firms are capable of delivering such services or that the expectations from them are realistic. It is becoming clear now that many of those firms had no expertise for such a task. Let me give you a few facts about retrofitting, which is also known as seismic strengthening. Retrofitting can be very expensive. The cost of retrofitting may range from 10 to 50% of the cost of similar new facility. Retrofitting is a long haul process. A timetable running into decades is needed, depending upon the inventory of unsafe construction and resources available. As an example, California Department of Transportation took about 35 years to retrofit its bridge at a whopping cost of 42,000 crores. Retrofitting also require considerable expertise in technology. Considerable technical know-how may be needed for retrofitting of complex structure or when the structure is to achieve better life safety performance. Again, the example of California Department of Transportation, they had to spend about 220 crore rupees per year for research on retrofitting technologies. In India, do we have consensus document on seismic assessment of existing buildings or criteria for seismic retrofitting? Government should also undertake retrofitting of important facilities. We cannot, on one hand, insist that every child must go to school and then have them go to schools located in unsafe buildings. The tragic scene of Muzaffarabad in Kashmir during Kashmir earthquake of 2005, where 400 children died in collapsed school buildings. Can't it recur in many cities of our country? A serious retrofitting uh, policy of public building is needed before we expect private buildings to be retrofitted. Last is priority, prioritization system is also needed. Since all the facilities cannot be retrofitted at the same time, to maximize the safety with the amount spent, we must have a rational priority system considering seismic hazard at site, vulnerability of the facility, and consequences of damages. In essence, a lot of preparation and background work is needed before a serious effort at retrofitting can be launched. Having defined the earthquake problem uh, by making two statements, one is ensure new construction to be safe, and second, retrofitting of existing unsafe buildings, let me conclude with this following remark. The best approach to earthquake problem is to work on all the fronts simultaneously, that is engineering, science and instrumentation, public awareness, public policy, etc. I do not underestimate that contribution science can make to reduce earthquake disasters. Nevertheless, it is important to put in perspective that earthquake safety is a rather challenging engineering problem requiring decades of focused work, at, and that in our enthusiasm for science, we cannot afford to ignore this aspect. Let me close by the quote from 1939 publication of Geological Survey of India on 1935 Bihar Nepal earthquake. I quote, leprosy is not a common disease, but medical profession has done its utmost to eradicate it for the sake of humanity. Great earthquakes are not a daily disease of any part of Earth's crust, but it should be our duty to do all that we can to reduce its effects. Unless this matter is looked upon in a broad way, posterity may look back upon our short sightedness with regret. In the Quetta area, an excellent building code has recently been drawn up, and reconstruction has been rigidly enforced in terms of that code. Such enforcement is perhaps easier in such a military area, but at least Quetta provides an example of practicability of a building code and its usefulness. It is perhaps not too much to hope that rest of the northern India will someday follow Quota's Quota's lead. I unquote. This quote is as much valid today as it was 80, 85 years ago. Thank you. Jai Hind.